Before the war, I was just a lad from a small village in Somerset. Worked at my father's shop, helped with deliveries, knew everyone by name. Life was simple, predictable. When the recruitment posters went up in 1915, all my mates were signing up. King and country, they said. Adventure, they promised. We'd be home by Christmas. I was 19 when I enlisted. Thought I knew what I was getting into. Thought I was ready. The journey to France. That's when the first doubts crept in. The older soldiers, the ones coming back on leave, they had this look in their eyes. Empty. Haunted. They didn't talk much about what it was like over there. When pressed, they'd just shake their heads and look away. We convinced ourselves they were just tired, that we'd be different. Arriving at the Somme in June of 1916, the front was already a nightmare. The constant rumble of artillery never stopped. Day and night, just this endless thunder that shook your bones. You could see the flashes lighting up the horizon after dark, like some terrible storm that never moved on. The trenches. Nothing prepares you for the trenches. The smell hit you first. Death, decay, human waste, all mixed together in mud that never dried. Rats everywhere, big as cats, some of them, bold enough to crawl over you while you tried to sleep. And the mud itself, it was alive somehow, trying to suck you down. Lost a boot to it once, just pulled it right off my foot. We spent weeks there before the big push, just waiting, watching, losing men to sniper fire and random shells. Every day chipped away at us a little more. By the time July came around, we were already exhausted, already hollowed out. But they told us the end was coming, that one big push would break through, and we'd finally be done with it all. June 30th, 1916. The night before it all began, we knew it was coming. For a week, our artillery had been pounding the German lines day and night. The biggest bombardment anyone had ever seen. Over 1 million shells, they said. The officers kept telling us Jerry wouldn't have a chance, that the wire would be cut to ribbons, that their trenches would be nothing but rubble. You'll practically be able to walk across, Lieutenant Morrison said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I remember sitting in that trench with the lads, trying to keep our spirits up. Young Billy from Devon. He was only 17, lied about his age to enlist. He kept talking about this girl back home, Sarah, showed us her picture for the 100th time. Pretty thing with dark hair. He'd promised to marry her when he got back. Tommy Richardson was sharpening his bayonet, hands steady as stone. He was the brave one, or at least that's what we thought. Found out later his hands only stayed steady when he had something to do with them. The moment he stopped, they'd shake like leaves. Sergeant Williams came around with the rum ration that evening. Extra portions, which should have told us something right there. He was a good man, the sergeant. Been through it before at Ypres. When he looked at us, really looked at us, I could see he knew. He knew what we were walking into, but what could he say? Orders were orders. I tried to write a letter home to my mother. Got as far as Dear Mum before my hand started shaking too badly to continue. What do you say? How do you tell someone you might not see them again without terrifying them? In the end, I just folded it up and put it in my breast pocket. Thought maybe I'd finish it after, when we'd broken through and it was all over. No one slept that night. How could you? The bombardment was deafening, even from our positions. The ground shook continuously, and beyond the noise, there was the fear. You could taste it in the air, thick and metallic. Men prayed who'd never prayed before. Some wrote frantically in journals. Others just sat in silence, staring at nothing. Around midnight, Corporal Davies started singing. Quietly at first, then others joined in. It's a long way to Tipperary. Funny how that song always made you feel better and worse at the same time. Reminded you of home while you were sitting in hell. At 0600 hours, they served breakfast, bacon and tea. I couldn't eat. My stomach was twisted in knots. Billy forced down a few bites, said he needed his strength. Tommy ate methodically, every bite measured, like it was just another day. Maybe that's how he coped. The officers moved down the line around 0700, doing final checks. Fixed bayonets. Extra ammunition distributed. I remember the weight of it all. The rifle, the pack, the entrenching tool, the gas mask. Must have been 60, 70 pounds of kit, and they expected us to run through mud with all that. Lieutenant Morrison gave us a speech. Something about duty and honor and making England proud. His voice cracked halfway through. He was only 22 himself, fresh out of officer training. This was his first real action, too. At 0720, the bombardment reached its crescendo. The noise was beyond anything human ears should hear. The very air seemed to scream. This was it. 10 minutes until 0 hour. 10 minutes until the whistles blew and we went over the top. I looked down the line at the faces of my mates. Billy's face was pale as milk. Tommy's jaw was clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. Sergeant Williams was checking his watch, lips moving in what might have been prayer. Those last 10 minutes felt like 10 hours and 10 seconds all at once. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it over the guns. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to run the other way, to dig deeper, to hide. But there was nowhere to go, nowhere but forward. At 0728, the bombardment stopped. Suddenly, horribly, it just stopped. The silence was almost worse than the noise. In that silence, you could hear men breathing, equipment rattling, someone crying quietly. At 0730, Lieutenant Morrison raised his whistle to his lips. And that's when everything changed forever. The whistle blew. That sound. It haunts me still. A single sharp note cutting through the morning air. All along the line, whistles echoing, officers shouting, "Over the top, lads!" at them. My legs wouldn't move at first. I stood there, frozen, staring at that ladder. Sergeant Williams gave me a shove. "Go on, son. Stay with your mates." His voice was gentle, almost fatherly. I grabbed the ladder and climbed. The first thing that hit me was the light. After the darkness of the trench, the morning sun was blinding. The second thing was the noise. Not the bombardment anymore, but something worse. Machine guns. Dozens of them, chattering like angry typewriters. They weren't supposed to be there. The artillery was supposed to have destroyed them. I pulled myself over the parapet and stood up. All around me, men were emerging from the trenches, forming up in lines like we'd practiced. We were supposed to walk, they'd told us. Keep formation, don't bunch up. The German lines were 800 yards away across no man's land. We started forward. 10 seconds in, the man next to me jerked and fell. I didn't even know his name. He was a replacement who joined us 2 days before. He didn't scream, just dropped like someone had switched him off. The machine gun fire was constant now, a horrible buzzing sound mixed with the crack of bullets passing close, too close. Men were falling all around me, but I kept walking. That's what they drilled into us. Keep going. Don't stop. Don't think. Billy was ahead of me, walking stiff-legged like a toy soldier. I saw him stumble, catch himself, keep going. Good lad, I thought. Then I saw the red spreading across his back and realized he'd been hit. He took 3 more steps before he fell. I wanted to stop, wanted to help him. But the training, the orders, they were louder than my own thoughts. Keep moving forward. The objective is the German trenches. Keep moving forward. 30 yards out, and we hit the wire that was supposed to be cut. It wasn't. It was barely touched. Men started bunching up, trying to find gaps, and that's when the machine guns really found their range. It was a slaughter. I saw Tommy Richardson get tangled in the wire, trying to cut through it. He was sawing at it with his wire cutters when the bullets took him. His body just hung there, suspended like some grotesque scarecrow. The shell hole appeared in front of me like salvation. I didn't think, just threw myself into it, hit the bottom hard, knocking the wind out of myself, lay there gasping, trying to understand what was happening. There were others in the crater, 3 men from another company and something else, something that had been a man once. I tried not to look at it. One of the soldiers was wounded, hit in the leg, bleeding badly. He was crying, calling for his mother. Just a boy, maybe 18. I pressed myself against the side of the crater, trying to become part of the earth itself. The machine gun fire swept over us continuously, a buzzing, whining death that never stopped. Every few seconds, a bullet would crack past, spitting dirt. Through the chaos, I could hear whistles still blowing, officers still shouting orders. Forward! Keep moving forward! But there was nowhere to go. Ahead was the wire and the machine guns. Behind was the same. We were trapped in the open, caught between walls of lead. I risked looking over the lip of the crater. What I saw will never leave me. Bodies, hundreds of bodies, lying in rows where they'd fallen, as if they'd all laid down to rest at the same moment. The grass, which had been green that morning, was red now. Men were still trying to advance, still following orders, walking into fire that couldn't miss. It was murder. Organized, systematic murder. Lieutenant Morrison was out there. I watched him rally a group of men, saw them make it maybe 20 yards before the machine guns cut them down. The lieutenant fell last, still waving his pistol, still shouting encouragement even as he died. The wounded man in the crater with me stopped crying. When I looked at him, his eyes were open but empty. Gone. Just like that. I didn't even know his name. Time lost all meaning. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like seconds. The sun climbed higher, and with it came the heat. Unbearable heat. Men were calling for water out there in the open. Water! Please, water! Some of those voices I recognized, but there was nothing anyone could do. A shell landed close, showering us with dirt and debris. When the smoke cleared, I saw one of the men in the crater with me was hit. Shrapnel had caught him in the chest. He looked surprised more than anything, looked down at the blood, looked at me, then slowly toppled over. I was alone in that crater now, alone with the dead and the dying scattered across no man's land. The machine guns never stopped, never even paused to reload. Or if they did, there were always others to take up the slack. I don't know how long I stayed there. Long enough for my legs to cramp. Long enough for thirst to become torture. Long enough to watch the sun track across the sky and know that everything they'd told us was a lie. There would be no breakthrough today, no victory, just death, senseless and wholesale. As the afternoon wore on, the attacks finally stopped. The whistles fell silent. What was left of our company was either dead in the field or had fallen back to the trenches. I was caught in between, one man in a shell hole in a field of corpses, waiting for darkness to come so I could crawl back to whatever remained of my life. The sun beat down mercilessly. July in northern France, and there wasn't a cloud in the sky. The heat inside that shell hole was suffocating. My water bottle had been empty for hours. My lips cracked and bled. My tongue felt like leather in my mouth. But the thirst was nothing compared to the sounds. The wounded were everywhere out there in no man's land, and they were crying out. Some called for help. Some called for their mothers. Some just screamed, wordless agony that went on and on until their voices gave out or they died. Each voice was someone's son, someone's brother, someone's friend, and there was nothing anyone could do. I recognized some of the voices. There was Private Cooper, who'd shown me pictures of his newborn daughter just yesterday. He was calling for water, over and over, his voice getting weaker each time. Water, please, someone, water. Then silence. I don't know if he died or just couldn't speak anymore. Young Billy's voice I heard too, At first I thought I was imagining it, but no, it was him. He was crying, talking to Sarah, the girl from back home, telling her he was sorry, that he'd tried to come back to her. His voice was so small, so frightened. He sounded like a child lost in the dark. I wanted to go to him. God, how I wanted to go to him. But movement meant death. The German snipers were watching. Anyone who moved died. I pressed my face into the dirt and tried not to listen. Tried not to hear them dying out there. But you can't unhear something like that. Those voices, they're with me still, even now. Sometimes I wake up at night and I can still hear Billy calling for Sarah. The smell was another kind of torture. Blood and death and human waste all mixed together in the heat. Bodies that had been men that morning were already starting to bloat in the sun. Flies appeared from nowhere, black clouds of them, covering everything. I had to keep my mouth closed, keep them from crawling in. There were rats, too. They always knew when there was death nearby. I watched them moving between the bodies, bold and fat. During the war, you learned to hate rats more than you hated the enemy. At least the enemy were trying to kill you quickly. Around midday, the Germans started shelling our lines. I could hear the shells screaming overhead, feel the ground shake with the impacts behind me. They were trying to prevent reinforcements, to stop anyone from helping the wounded trapped in the open. Each shell that passed over made me flinch deeper into the crater, knowing that if they adjusted their range even slightly, I'd be obliterated. At one point, a wounded man crawled past my crater. I didn't recognize him. His face was covered in blood and mud. He was dragging himself back toward our lines inch by inch, using his elbows because his legs didn't work anymore. He didn't make it far. A sniper found him. His body jerked once, then went still. He was maybe 10 feet from my hiding place. The afternoon dragged on like a lifetime. Every minute felt like an hour. The sun moved so slowly across the sky, I thought time itself had broken. I counted my heartbeats, counted my breaths. Anything to keep my mind occupied, to keep from thinking about where I was, what I'd seen, what I might still see. I found myself talking to God. I wasn't a religious man before the war, hadn't been to church since I was a boy. But there in that shell hole, surrounded by death, I prayed. Begged, really. Not to be saved, I was past that. I just prayed that it would end, that the dying would stop, that the voices would go silent and give us all some peace. By late afternoon, most of the voices had stopped. The field had gone quiet except for the occasional moan or cry. The silence was somehow worse than the screaming had been. It meant they were dead, all those men, all those boys who'd climbed out of the trenches that morning full of fear and hope and determination. Gone. I thought about my mother. Wondered if she knew yet. Wondered how they'd tell her. Missing in action. Probably. That's what they said when they couldn't find a body, or when there wasn't enough left to identify. She'd wait for me, I knew. Wait and hope and pray that I'd come walking up the lane one day. The thought of her waiting, hoping for a son who might be dead in a crater in France, made me want to weep. But I didn't weep. Couldn't. Something inside me had shut down. Gone numb. It was like watching everything happen from far away, like it was happening to someone else, and I was just observing. Maybe that's how you survive something like that, by not really being there at all. The sun finally mercifully began to sink toward the horizon. The shadows grew longer. The heat started to ease. I watched that sun drop lower and lower, marking my survival in degrees. Every inch it fell was another inch closer to darkness, to safety, to escape. As twilight came, the machine guns quieted. Not silent. They never went fully silent, but less active. The Germans knew what would happen after dark. They knew the wounded would try to crawl back, that rescue parties would venture out. They'd be waiting. But I had no choice. I couldn't stay in that crater, couldn't spend another day in the sun without water, surrounded by corpses. When full darkness finally came, I was going to move. I was going to try to make it back. I just had to survive until then. Just a few more hours. I'd made it this far. Surely I could make it a few more hours. I lay there in the growing darkness, listening to the occasional shot, the distant rumble of artillery, the sounds of war that never truly stopped. And I waited for my chance to crawl back to whatever was left of the world I'd known that morning. Full darkness came around 2200 hours. No moon that night, thank God. Just stars scattered across the sky like they had no business being beautiful over such a place. I waited another hour after dark, listened. The machine guns had settled into sporadic fire, sweeping no man's land at random intervals. Flares went up occasionally, bathing everything in harsh white light. When they did, I froze completely, didn't even breathe. Movement during a flare meant death. Around 2,300, I started to move. Every muscle in my body had cramped from lying still for so long. My first attempt to crawl nearly made me cry out from the pain, but I bit down on my sleeve and kept going, slowly, inch by inch, using my elbows and knees, keeping as flat to the ground as possible. The ground was awful. Churned mud mixed with things I tried not to identify. My hands sank into soft patches that weren't mud. I crawled past bodies, over bodies, sometimes had to move them aside. Men I'd known, men I'd laughed with, now just obstacles between me and survival. I crawled past Billy, knew it was him even in the dark by his build, by the way his hair fell. His eyes were open, staring up at those stars. I wanted to close them, to give him that dignity at least. But I couldn't risk it. Couldn't risk the movement, the time. I'm sorry, Billy. I'm so sorry. A flare went up and I pressed myself flat, lay there not breathing while the light burned overhead. Could see everything in that awful white glow, the bodies stretching away in every direction, the torn earth, the wire gleaming like metal teeth. Then darkness again. I moved. It took me 2 hours to crawl 300 yards, 2 hours of fear and pain and forcing myself forward. The German machine guns swept over periodically. I heard bullets crack past, felt them hit the ground near me. Each time I thought that was it, that I was done. But somehow they missed. About halfway back, I heard someone else moving. Another survivor trying to make it home. We ended up crawling side by side for a while. Never saw his face, never spoke. Speaking would give away our positions, but just knowing someone else was alive, that I wasn't alone out there, it helped. We separated when a flare went up and we had to freeze in different spots. I never saw him again. Don't know if he made it. The British trenches appeared suddenly out of the darkness. I almost crawled right past them. A sentry challenged me, voice sharp with fear. Halt! Password. I couldn't remember the password. My mind was blank. I just croaked out, "Don't shoot. British. Coming in." Hands reached down and hauled me over the parapet. I collapsed in the bottom of the trench, shaking uncontrollably. Someone gave me water. I drank it so fast I vomited it back up. They gave me more, slower this time. "What's your name, lad?" A sergeant I didn't recognize. Private James Thornton, Somerset Light Infantry." Jesus, you're one of the morning push? How many made it back? I didn't know. Couldn't answer. Just shook my head. They helped me down the trench to what remained of our position. The scene there was chaos. Wounded men everywhere, moaning, crying, medical orderlies rushing between them, trying to do too much with too little. The smell of blood was overpowering. I found Sergeant Williams. He was sitting on a fire step, head in his hands. When he looked up and saw me, something crossed his face. Relief, maybe, or guilt that I'd survived when so many hadn't. "Thornton, thank God. Any others?" No, Sergeant. I didn't see anyone else. He nodded slowly, pulled out a notebook. Right. I'll mark you down. We're doing roll call at first light. What's left of us? How many, Sergeant? How many made it back? He was quiet for a long moment. Out of our company, maybe 30, maybe, out of 150 men. The number didn't make sense, couldn't be right. 30 out of 150. That meant Billy was dead. Tommy was dead. Lieutenant Morrison. Cooper. All of them. All those men I'd trained with, lived with, fought beside. Gone in a single morning. I must have made some sound because Sergeant Williams gripped my shoulder. Easy, lad. Easy. You're back now. You're safe. But I wasn't safe. None of us were. This was just one day, one battle. The war would go on. Tomorrow or the next day, they'd blow the whistles again and we'd go over the top again. And more men would die in the wire, in the mud, screaming for water and their mothers. They found me a spot to sit. Gave me some bully beef and hardtack, but I couldn't eat. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Billy hanging in the wire. Heard the voices calling for help. Saw the bodies lying in rows across that field. Dawn came eventually. Gray light creeping over no man's land, revealing what we'd all tried not to think about in the darkness. The field was covered with bodies, thousands of them. British dead lying where they'd fallen, a testament to the day's failure. Roll call was agony. Name after name called out with no response. Richardson Thomas. Silence. Davies William. Silence. Morrison, Lieutenant James. Silence. On and on. Each silence was a man who'd been alive yesterday, who'd laughed and complained about the food and talked about home. Now just names on a list. The officers started planning the next attack. They were going to try again. Different tactics this time, they said. Better coordination. It would work next time. They always said it would work next time. I sat in that trench and listened to them planning to send more men to die, and something inside me broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly cracked and fell away. The boy from Somerset who'd enlisted with dreams of glory was dead somewhere in that field. What sat in the trench now was something else. Something that knew the truth about war and glory and all the pretty lies they told you to get you to climb that ladder. We stayed in that trench for 3 more days. Could see the bodies out there rotting in the sun. Could smell them. The Germans didn't allow truces to collect the dead. So they just lay there, hundreds of men becoming part of the landscape. On the 4th day, they pulled us back for rest. We marched away from the Somme, and I never looked back. Couldn't bear to. But I didn't need to look. That field, those bodies, those voices, they were burned into my mind forever. The Battle of the Somme would go on for months. Thousands more would die for a few miles of worthless ground. But July 1st, 1916, that was the day that broke us all. That was the day we learned what modern war really meant. And some of us, the unlucky ones, survived to carry that knowledge forward. They call it shell shock now. The doctors have a name for it, as if naming it makes it real, makes it something they can understand. But they don't understand. How could they? They weren't there. The nightmares started that first night after the Somme. Haven't stopped since. Nearly every night for 8 years now, I'm back in that crater, back in the mud. Sometimes I'm climbing the ladder again, knowing what's waiting but unable to stop. Sometimes I'm crawling through the dark and the bodies reach out to grab me, pull me down with them. Sometimes I'm just lying there listening to Billy call for Sarah, knowing I could save him if I only moved, but my body won't obey. I wake up screaming. Or so my wife tells me. I don't remember the screaming. Just wake up with my heart pounding, sheets soaked with sweat, her hand on my shoulder trying to calm me down. She's patient, my Alice. More patient than I deserve. but I see the fear in her eyes sometimes. Fear of what I've become. The sounds are the worst. Sudden noises, a door slamming, a car backfiring, thunder, and I'm back there. My body reacts before my mind can catch up. I've thrown myself to the ground in the middle of town more than once. People stare. They don't understand. How could they? I can't go to fireworks displays, can't stand in crowds, can't sleep in complete darkness, because then I'm back in no man's land, crawling through the dead. But I can't sleep with too much light either, because then I see them, see their faces, see Billy and Tommy and all the rest. The guilt is a weight I carry every day. Survivor's guilt, one doctor called it, as if naming it helps. Why did I survive when better men died? Billy was 19, had a girl waiting for him. Tommy had a wife and 2 children. Lieutenant Morrison was the best of us, brave and decent and true. Why them and not me? I think about that question every day. Have for 8 years. Still don't have an answer. Coming home was harder than I thought it would be. I dreamed about home every day in the trenches. Dreamed about walking up the lane to my parents' house, about sleeping in my own bed, about everything being like it was before. But when I finally got there, I realized I didn't belong anymore. The village hadn't changed. The shop was still there, the church, the pub, all exactly as I'd left them. But I had changed so completely that I might as well have been a different person. The boy who'd left in 1915 was dead. He died on July 1st, 1916, somewhere in that field. People wanted to hear stories, war stories. They wanted glory and heroism and tales of British courage. They wanted to believe it all meant something, that their sons and brothers and husbands had died for a noble cause. How could I tell them the truth? How could I tell them it was just slaughter? That there was no glory, no heroism, just boys dying in mud for a few yards of worthless ground. So I told them what they wanted to hear, or more often I said nothing at all. Let them think what they wanted. The real war, the true war, I kept locked inside. Shared it only with other men who'd been there, who knew. We didn't talk about it much, even among ourselves. Didn't need to. We could see it in each other's eyes. I tried to go back to the shop, to my old life. Lasted 3 weeks. Couldn't bear it. Couldn't stand there selling flour and tea and acting like the world made sense. Couldn't smile at customers and make small talk about the weather while Billy's voice echoed in my head. I found work at a factory instead. Mindless work, repetitive. Keep your head down, do your job, don't think too much. That suited me better. The noise of the machines helped drown out the noise in my head. Alice came into my life 2 years after I got back. She was a nurse during the war, worked in a hospital in London. She'd seen enough to have some idea of what we'd been through, even if she hadn't been in the trenches herself. When I woke up screaming, she didn't ask questions, just held me until the shaking stopped. We married in 1922. I wanted to be a good husband, wanted to give her the life she deserved. But I was broken, and broken things don't work right, no matter how much you want them to. I had moments of anger that came from nowhere, days where I couldn't get out of bed, times when I'd just stare at nothing, lost in memories of that field. She stayed anyway. God knows why. I've asked her. She just says she loves me, loves the man I am underneath the war. I'm not sure that man exists anymore, but I'm grateful she thinks he does. We have no children. It was my choice, not hers. How could I bring a child into this world? How could I look at a son and know that someday there might be another war and he might have to go through what I went through? I couldn't bear it. Couldn't risk it. Better to let my line end with me. Alice understood, or pretended to. I know she wanted children. I know I've taken that from her along with so much else. Just another weight to carry. Just another way the war keeps taking things even years after it ended. People say time heals. They're wrong. Time just gives you distance. The memories don't fade. They're as sharp now as they were in 1916. I can still see Billy's face, still hear the machine guns, still smell the blood and mud. Time hasn't healed anything. It's just taught me how to function around the wound. Some days are better than others. Some days I can almost pretend to be normal. Go to work, come home, have dinner with my wife, read the paper, almost convince myself that I'm just a man living a regular life. But then something will trigger it, a smell, a sound, a stray thought, and I'm back there, always back there. The war ended in 1918. The shooting stopped, the treaties were signed, the men came home. But for those of us who were there, who saw what we saw, the war never really ended. It just moved inside us. We brought it home with us, and it lives there still. Sometimes I wonder what I would tell my younger self, that boy from Somerset standing in line at the recruitment office. Would I try to stop him? Tell him to run, to hide, to do anything but sign those papers? Or would I say nothing, knowing that some things you can't understand until you've lived them? I don't know. I'll never know. What I do know is this. War is not glory. It's not adventure. It's not noble sacrifice or heroic charges or any of the things they tell you to get you to enlist. War is boys dying in mud. War is listening to your friends scream for help you can't give. War is carrying the weight of survival when better men died. War is nightmares that never end and guilt that never fades and a wound that never heals. They gave me a medal. For what? I'm not sure. For surviving? For not running? For being in the right place at the wrong time? I keep it in a drawer. Can't bear to look at it. That piece of metal is supposed to represent valor, but all I see when I look at it is Billy's face, Tommy's body in the wire, the field of the dead. I'm 44 years old now. I've lived longer than many of the men who went over the top with me that morning. Billy never saw 20. Tommy never saw his children grow up. Lieutenant Morrison never got the chance to be anything but a soldier. I survived. I'm still here, still breathing, still living, still carrying all of them with me. Sometimes I think survival is its own kind of punishment, a life sentence to remember, to bear witness, to never forget what we did to each other in the fields of France. They're building memorials now, names carved in stone. Lest we forget, they say. But those of us who were there can never forget. It's the ones who weren't there who need reminding. The ones who might someday, in their forgetting, let it happen again. If I could leave one message, one truth from the Somme, it would be this. Remember the cost. Remember that every name on those memorials was a real person, someone's son, someone's friend, someone who laughed and loved and dreamed of home. Remember that glory is a lie we tell ourselves to make the killing bearable. Remember that war is hell, and hell leaves scars that never fade. Remember us, not as heroes, not as symbols, but as the boys we were, the men we might have been, and the ghosts we became. Remember Billy calling for Sarah. Remember Tommy in the wire. Remember the field of the dead stretching away under that summer sun. Remember that war doesn't end when the shooting stops. It echoes forward through all the lives it touched, all the people broken and changed and haunted by what they saw and what they did. Remember, so that maybe, somehow, it won't happen again, though I suspect it will. We never really learn, do we? Each generation thinks their war will be different, that they'll find meaning in the madness, that the sacrifice will be worth it. It never is. The Somme taught me that. And though I wish every day that I'd never learned that lesson, though I'd give anything to be that innocent boy from Somerset again, I carry the truth with me. Will carry it until I die. We went over the top on July 1st, 1916. Some of us survived, but none of us came back.